Voices serves as the megaphone for individuals who have endured transformational change. By highlighting trials and triumphs, our desire is to create a safe space for pivotal conversations, which in turn will deepen the story and provoke hope for you, our listeners. As you may know, change is never easy, but it is inevitable. You are not alone in what you're facing. Your transformation is possible, purposeful, and now. And here's Erin Wiggum, founder and managing director of New You, with this week's guest.
Welcome to another edition of New Voices. My name is Erin Wiggum, your host, and well as managing director of New You, which New You is a way for individuals to imagine, discover, and actualize a 2.0 version of yourself. However, today we are on New Voices, which serves as the megaphone for individuals who have endured transformational and pivotal experiences and are living to tell their story. We have a wonderful guest with us today. You guys are truly in for a treat. This young lady right here has done some amazing things, and we're so excited to hear just the impact that she's had on so many lives all over the place. She has a very colorful story that she's going to share with us. And I just want you to sit back, grab some popcorn, do what you got to do to listen to this narrative, this wonderful narrative that's coming. So I present to you none other than this author, this innovator, this creator, I just told her she's the butcher, she's the baker, she's the candlestick maker. But she is a woman who makes things happen. And one of the things I'm going to say also in her intro is that there is a force around her. She has a gravitational pull that a lot of people do not have. And I noticed it when I first met her, and now it's been 3-4 years later, and she still has that force where people just immediately when they meet her, they are intrigued by her. And then however intrigued they are, she exceeds that level of intrigue, right? And so we just are really excited to have her with us today, none other than Amnoni Myers. This wonderful woman. Welcome, Amnoni.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So let's jump right in with your story. We start every interview with your story, however you would like to tell it, from wherever you would like to start.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you again for having me on here. I appreciate you, and you're an amazing individual, so I'm just happy to be in this place with you. So
thank you.
I would say that my story began in the womb, in my mother's womb. I was impacted by the crack epidemic. So I was born with drugs in my system. And so being born with drugs in my system, that really impacted my life very early on.
Yeah.
Where, a lot of people will say that, Amnoni, you weren't going to survive. You weren't going to make it. Yeah. And so having that sort of pull over my head, throughout my life was something that I was like, I'm just determined to write a different story about me. And so that experience then landed me in the foster care system. But before that, I was raised by my great aunt who took care of my siblings and I for about 10 years. And then I went into moving in with my mom, but because my mom wasn't prepared to take care of us, we ended up right back in the foster care system. And so I would say that my story has many different stories and many different journeys. Yeah. And I'm here to just say that I am thankful for my journey. I know that a lot of people get upset about their story and about their journey. And I think that there was a time that I got upset about it and I was sad about it because I felt like I was continuously fighting just to live, fighting to survive. And I think at one point I was like, you know what, I really want to thrive. So what does thriving look like? Yeah. And thriving means that I cannot allow my past to dictate my future. I got to keep going. Yeah. I got to keep fighting. Yeah. And so it was through many different experiences, such as me experiencing homelessness when I was in college, that I said, you know what, I just need something different. Yeah. And opportunities were presented to me from that moment, which then led me to say, you know what, I'm not going to keep looking back. I'm going to keep going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So we're gonna pick that apart a little bit. So
Absolutely.
When you were talking about, you started off with cracking your system, and as a young child, was there any impact on your development, scholastically or in any other way, because of that? And how did that kind of play out in your youth experience?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. Because I was born with drugs in my system, I developed asthma at birth.
Okay.
Developmentally, I had a learning disability.
Okay.
And so I was in special education classes from the moment that I was learning.
Yeah.
And that really impacted me because, when you grow up and, you're met by difference.
Yeah.
So I had to take the smaller school bus.
Yep.
I had to have assistants in the classroom.
Yep.
And so that, in a lot of ways, even being in the classroom and still needing a lot of support, I always felt like I wasn't good enough, or I wasn't worthy enough, or I wasn't smart enough.
Yeah.
And so I felt like I had to really fight that.
Yeah.
And, I think I also had a lot of behavioral issues, not necessarily in elementary school, but more so when I went to high school.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was caught drawing graffiti on the wall.
Okay.
And my high school teacher caught me. And I ran away from him. And I was not at all on track to graduate from high school.
Okay.
I had not passed the standardized test. I had taken that test like over 7 times, cheated my way through it, and still couldn't pass. And it wasn't until my high school principal sat me down and said, "Amnoni, what do you like to do besides drawing graffiti on the wall?" And I was 17 years old at the time, and I didn't know.
Yeah.
But it was them sitting down with me and talking to me.
Yeah.
And helping me figure out what was it that I was really good at.
Yeah.
And through that conversation, they discovered I grew up in foster care. They also discovered that I was a really good writer. They also discovered that I was somebody who was very friendly, that the teachers loved me. And so they were like, we're going to really use this to really help support you. And so it was them really taking the time to work with me every day.
Yeah.
And it was through that experience that I passed the standardized test. And I think for me, I remember my high school principal, because I had a documented disability, what they wanted to do was they wanted to essentially not have me take the test. They wanted to get me approved so that I didn't have to take it. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that because I want to prove to myself. Moving forward. Yeah. Exactly. And I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it without the extra assistance of not actually doing it. I wanted to at least try. Right. And by them putting those supports in place, it really helped me elevate. So,
wow.
and I passed.
Wow. So when you think about, and shout outs to all the wonderful educators out there who are actually doing the work,
Absolutely.
who take it as more than a job and who go that extra mile. I think as something that's I'm going to underscore something you just said about this one educator and your principal who understood that you weren't stupid, right?
Yep.
Okay, so you're not learning it this way. What other way do you learn, right?
Yep.
And having that alternative, it brought you to light.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, well, if a flower's not growing in this pot, what if we put it in this basin? Like, how do we reposition her for success?
Absolutely.
And sometimes, when you are coming in with such a troubled past, all based on things that you had no control over, right?
Yeah.
You now are a lot of times just coping, and you're living you are living a life that is basically for survival, right? And so some of the things that may come natural to other children, they don't have to worry about all the other things that you're worrying about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I just wanted to underscore that point there with the educator and your principal, how they found a way to approach one thing from an alternative standpoint, and how that unlocked this beautiful tapestry of who you are right now and the author that you are right now and all the other things. You already were doing these things, but sometimes our American education system doesn't give you credit for the things that you do. It only measures the things they want you to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, and it's not tailored.
Exactly.
And it was interesting because one of the things that when I was writing my book, I had reached out to my principal and just asked her, what made you, decide to invest in me? What made you believe in me?
Yeah.
And she said, Amnoni, you were a student that went under the radar, and I saw that.
Yeah.
And the crazy part is my school was actually a large school, but during my junior year, it turned into 4 smaller schools to help with the achievement gap.
Right.
So my senior year, this was a brand new principal. And sometimes you also need new energy to be able to understand problems that may have already persisted and people have already just walked over.
Yep.
But she saw the problem and she helped me head on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Let's talk about being in the foster care system. We always hear nightmares about the foster care system.
Yeah.
And so, can you share a little bit about the experiences, whatever you're comfortable with, and where you what does it feel like? Do you feel displaced or do you feel excited? Talk a little bit about how you're feeling in the system, and then in those given experiences as you're going from one foster place to perhaps another.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
One of the things that I say is that, in the foster care system, it's kind of like you're learning how to ride a bike for the first time without training wheels. And you don't have any guidance.
Yeah.
You don't have really a lot of support, and you don't have a lot of agency.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was, playing basketball on the basketball court, and all of a sudden, a teacher showed up, and I thought I was in trouble, because I was a troublemaker.
Yeah, you thought you did something.
I thought I did something.
They caught me over there chewing on crayons.
Right. And so when he ended up picking me up and bringing me into a conference room, I was met by my social worker and my 2 siblings. And it was there that we learned that we were no longer going home. And that was really devastating because I was not necessarily sure what was going on. It just felt like it was a little bit out of the blue. And I just didn't know what to anticipate. And so when we went into the DCF office, it was after hours, all of our belongings were already packed up and already there. And so you don't really get a chance to say goodbye to your family. You don't get a chance to say goodbye to your mom. And so I felt like that was one traumatic experience that I faced. But then when my social worker ended up bringing me over into our foster homes, I thought that we were all going to be together.
Right.
And it was there that we got separated. Oh. And so that's an issue that is very prevalent in the foster care system, is that they don't keep siblings together.
Yeah.
And for me, my siblings and I, we made a pact at a very young age that we were going to stick together, that we were going to raise our kids together, that we were in it together. And so to not necessarily be able to experience and do that, that was really challenging.
Yeah.
You go from, sharing a bedroom with your little sister, who's your best friend, to all of a sudden, she's no longer with you.
Right.
And sometimes people don't recognize that the bond that siblings have is one of the most important. It's one of the most crucial.
Yeah.
And it's a place where it's a protective factor.
Yeah.
Your siblings are your protective factors.
Right.
And so to be able to be ripped away from not just my biological mother and my family members, but to be ripped away from my little sister was really hard, because my brother and I ended up living together. But then, I ended up having to leave. And that was really challenging. I'm not sure if you ever heard of the 7-day notice.
No.
But essentially, a 7-day notice is when a foster parent no longer wants you in their home. They put out a 7-day notice, and you have within 7 days to leave. And I remember I was actually talking to my foster sister about this yesterday. We were watching a short film, and I was like, I remember overhearing my foster mom talk to her best friend on the phone and telling her that I was going to be leaving. So I knew before she even told me, because I overheard her, And so I just think that the challenges of, being ripped away from your biological family and not understanding why, to then thinking you're going into a better home, which you're really not. A lot of the times.
A lot of the time, yeah.
So you're often questioning, what was the point of me even leaving my biological family if the same stuff that I'm experiencing in my biological family that I'm experiencing here in foster care, you know? And so for me, that was just, you know, really challenging.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you know, the aging out process, which means that when you turn either 18 or 21,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
all of a sudden, you know,
You're on your own.
You're on your own.
Yeah.
And for me, you know, I was living with a family for about like 2.5 years.
Okay.
And I was expected to like stay with them throughout college. That's what I thought. And then all of a sudden I'm told, you know, that my foster mom is no longer being paid to take care of me. So I need to leave. And so
And this is a different one than the...
this is a different one, yeah.
Okay, wow.
This is when I was aging out.
Okay.
And, you know, you never really are able to establish stability.
Yeah.
You know, or even being able to trust and build trust. You know, sometimes people, what I say is that people just expect for you to trust, but trust is like really earned.
It is.
And especially if you've grown up in foster care, you have to like really prove yourself that you're trustworthy, that you're going to be consistent.
Yeah.
You know, and all of those things can also just lay out into your own patterns of your own life as you're really trying to unlearn some of those things that you've been taught.
Yeah.
You know, from a system perspective.
Yeah. And let me just chime in here. I think that, you know, you're talking about trust, and this is a very sensitive time for both the foster parent as well as the child. It's a very sensitive time because they don't know what they're accepting into their house, who they're accepting into their house, what comes along with that. And then you don't know whose house you're walking into and what stuff that they're dealing with, right? And so, like, it's very important on both sides for truth to be paramount. Right?
Absolutely.
Like, truth, like, you can't even spell trust without true.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Like, and I always tell people, like, you know, everybody wants you to be honest until you tell them the truth.
Yep.
You know, but like, the truth is so necessary in building trust that if you don't have truth, you don't have trust.
Yeah.
And when, you know, the foster parent may be just appearing up a certain way for the agency, but really, you know, I'm thinking a lot about, like, the story of Annie, right?
Yep.
How, you know, the woman, I forget the woman's name, was running the house, and, you know, she's lying about this and doing that, but you know, so you might be presenting yourself one way, and actually it's not that way, and then the child may be presenting themselves one way, like, just, I want somebody to take me in. And so on both ends, somebody's hiding something, right? And you can't hide and confide. Like, confidence has to be transparent, right?
Yeah.
For me to have true confidence in what you're doing. And you know, people will confide in me a lot about a lot of different things. But what I'll tell them is, no, you got to tell me the whole truth.
Yeah.
Don't tell me what you want me to know. But, like, if you're going to confide in me, then tell me everything.
Yeah.
So that, but people want to hide and confide, and they don't go, the two, they can't go together, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very, what I'm hearing is, like, you know, people are expecting you just to trust them because they accepted you into their home.
Yeah.
And like you said, a lot of those issues are in the new home. And, and so there is it's a very complex, layered, textured challenge that both parties really have to deal with. And, you know, sometimes you hear great stories about foster care and how, you know, like, this person changed my life. The whole trajectory of my life changed by, you know, the love that I received and the attention and whatever, right? And then the majority of the stories, or I would say, you know, at least half of the stories you hear, are very turbulent. And, you know, like you said, it was, you know, sometimes it's just about a check, or it's just about, you know, whatever else, right?
Yeah.
And I had one guy who used to go to my church, and he had 23 foster brothers and sisters.
Oh, wow.
Right. And, you know, thank God that the woman stepped in all these lives and kind of stabilized them. But that's a lot of people. That's a lot. Like, is that any better than, you know, where you were coming from? Right.
Yeah.
And so, wow, this is I'm extremely intrigued by this story here.
Yeah.
And while you're navigating all of this, how are you developing as an individual? Like, how did you see yourself?
Yeah, I was all over the place, honestly.
Okay.
And I was just going to say, too, that, I think that, in these homes, what you're hoping for is for love and for confidence building and your self-esteem to be built. And I just remember just from a young age, just hating myself, hating my skin color, hating how I looked, because I didn't really have somebody coming alongside me saying, Amnoni, you are beautiful, And even though I did have my church family really being able to solidify that for me, when I went into foster care, I was absolved from being able to even go to that church. And so the people that were pouring into my life were no longer really there. They were sort of on the outside looking in.
Okay.
And so for me as a young adult, growing up, I didn't have a lot of confidence. I didn't have a high self-esteem. I didn't have like high values of how I cared about myself. And so it's like, as you get older, you begin to like relearn some of those things and to say, Amnoni, like what I had to really learn was that the things that people placed onto me was things that they were actually feeling themselves.
Yeah, they were projecting. Yeah.
But I ended up as a kid taking that all on.
Right.
And so for me, it was really about the teachers and the mentors that walked alongside me to say, Amnoni, you are beautiful. Amnoni, you do have a path forward. You are going to be amazing. You are going to be great. And it was just through those moments that really helped me. And then also too, like, you go through a period of self-development. So I did go through a program focused on self-development. And that was really, really helpful because it really helped me to really understand that my trauma, the things that I experienced and the things that I sort of put onto myself, they didn't belong to me. And so for me, it's been about how do I actually unravel, how do I sort of unlayer and peel back some of those really negative things and how do I adopt positive affirmations and things about myself. And so that's really like the journey that I'm on now is really developing myself in that way, because I think that, in society, you're told all these other things, but internally you really have to look at, just your path and like where you've been and how those things don't have to determine who you become.
Yeah.
And so that for me is like the journey that I'm on is like a journey of like that inner healing.
Got it.
Yeah.
So you this principal and this teacher, they help to kind of unpackage who you are and kind of give you a different perspective about things. So you go to college.
I do.
Let's talk about college. What was college life like? Like what? Let's walk through that time period. Did you feel better? Did you feel better or freer in college? And like, what did freedom look like? Or did you feel more responsible because you didn't have a place to go back to? So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say that, like I mentioned, growing up in special education, one of the major challenges that I experienced was going right into college and being like completely shocked that the supports and things that I received in high school, in middle school, and elementary school looked different.
Yeah.
And so I had to advocate for myself in a new way.
Yeah.
Thankfully, when I graduated from high school, I had a 2.3 GPA. So I was not actually on track to even go to any colleges, but Salem State ended up accepting me into their bridge program, which was a program that you had to do, and you had to maintain, a 2.7 GPA in order to like get into regular school. And so I had that support then, but I would say that in some ways I felt free, and then in other ways I felt responsible. I felt like I remember when, kids were moving in with their parents and their parents were moving in all their stuff and they had like their whole tribe with them.
Yeah.
And that wasn't my experience. And I remember feeling like incredibly sad about that because I was moving through another transition, a normal transition, but my experience didn't look quite normal and it didn't feel normal, and so I actually ended up transferring colleges a few times.
Okay.
I went to Salem State. Okay. Then I transferred to Hampton University.
Okay, Hampton. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
All right.
I then ended up actually experiencing a major anxiety attack while I was at Hampton.
Okay.
I still made the dean's list, but it was a struggle.
All right.
And it was at that moment that I had to say, you know what, Amnoni, all of the things that I was experiencing came up.
Yeah.
And I didn't necessarily even know how to deal with it all. And so I had to actually get help at that moment. And so I ended up finishing out the semester. I ended up, like I said, going into a personal development program to really help me move through the traumatic experiences that I had faced. And then from there, I ended up going off to Gordon College in Boston, which was a liberal Christian college. And so as you can imagine, your college experience looks different from, everyone else's. But I would say that experience at Gordon was actually really pivotal for me because I got to experience and explore things that I had never experienced. So going to Africa for the very first time, traveling for the very first time, those were things that I didn't get to really experience.
Right.
I got to go off on my own and explore California and do my social work practicum there. And so for me, I felt like college was preparing me for how I was going to actually pursue my adult life because it was like it gave me a landing place to recognize that there's a whole bunch of opportunities that I was not aware of. And even though I'm in a lot of debt, it's something that I still wouldn't take back,
Yeah, you get one life to live.
You do.
I used to tell my students all the time, I was in higher ed for a while.
Okay.
And I used to tell my students all the time, I said, listen, you enjoy this time period, these 4, 5, 6 years, however long you're whether you do master's or undergrad or you're only undergrad. I said, enjoy this time because you are not going to get this blend in life back where you have the freedom of being an adult without the responsibility of being an adult.
Absolutely.
And so right now you have kind of training wheels on adulthood while you're in college. And people will still give you the grace to say, oh, well, they're young. They'll figure it out. Or once you get over 30, training wheels are off.
They are.
It's whatever you did, you knew what you were doing.
Exactly.
Right? And so
for real.
Being able to maximize that and go with the flow of where life is taking you and, to Africa, to this, to, I'm assuming that it opened you up in a way that was foreign to you, but freeing for you.
Yeah, it's kind of strange because, as somebody that deals with a lot of imposter syndrome, you're constantly in between these two worlds. Man, do I deserve to be here?
Yeah.
Am I really here?
Yeah.
Wow, I can't believe I'm here. This is so amazing.
Yeah.
And I remember when I transferred to Gordon, I told myself that I wanted to get involved with every and anything because I wanted to make sure that I enjoyed my college years.
Yeah.
It was really important for me to live on campus. It was important for me to get involved and to volunteer and to be a resident assistant and be an orientation leader and to be a mentor to students at the Boys and Girls Club and to create a mentorship program. All of those things were really important for me because a lot of times it was my first. And what I didn't realize, what I was also experiencing and doing was healing my inner child, because you're doing things and you're putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
And you're really, for me at least, I was like, you know what, I am going to go past the status quo. I want to ensure that I am taking advantage of every opportunity that I have in front of me.
Yeah.
And if it's not in front of me, how do I create that space, not just for me, but for other students like me? And I would say that, when you go up in the foster care system, less than 2 to 5% of young people even go to college or even graduate. And so there was a lot of times where I felt alone. I didn't see anybody else on my journey that went through foster care.
Right.
And I remember when I first went to Gordon and I was in the financial aid department trying to figure it out. And they had never even had a student that grew up in foster care. So they didn't even know what to do.
Right.
And so for me, it was, me having to really ride the wave, but actually having to create that wave for myself.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Wow. It's so, I think it's so amazing, Amani, even as I think about your story, how, you started off with, being born into a tumultuous situation, right? That you didn't ask for. But I think it's so powerful how, even though the story started that way, that nothing, even though, life threw a particular scenario, a set of scenarios at you, it's proven for you to be unbreakable, right?
Yeah.
And what I love about you in particular is that, and I'm gonna give you your flowers. How about that? We'll
I
do that for a
appreciate
minute.
that. I haven't gotten flowers in a minute.
Yeah,
So.
I got you. I got you. What I love about you though is that you have a light to you that people see and they want to experience. And when people meet you, when you like you're not the person who walks in a room and nobody notices. You're the person who walks in a room and everybody notices, right?
Yeah.
And they're intrigued in some way, in some level, you know, and you kind of have this, I called it a gravitational pull earlier. You have this draw, right?
Yeah.
And I noticed it early, not knowing your story.
Yeah.
And then hearing your story, it's like you've always had this where somebody saw, like the principal told you, you're the student that fell under the radar, right?
Yep.
But she saw it though.
Yeah.
There's other students, but she saw it in you.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so, like, I want you to see, and maybe you do, maybe you don't. I want you to see, notice, and like lean into the fact that as much as you may have common shared experiences, there's nothing common about you. And that being able to have a level of I told my nephews this. My nephews graduated from college, from high school a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
And the one, he's going to be fine. He's going into cybersecurity. He's very analytical, very like he's that type of person. So he's going to be fine. Okay. The other one, he's gonna be good if he makes good choices. He's one of the kids who he can do it all. He can run fast. He can jump high. He does well in school. He has all the things at his disposal, right?
Yep.
And what he is he's Mr. Charismatic. He's Mr. Charisma,
Yep.
right? And so, but what I told him was this, is that charisma without character is poison. And your smile will get you in the room.
Yep.
But your character will keep you in the room.
Yeah.
And so being able to like, he has the draw I'm saying with you.
Yep.
He has that draw where like you just want to be around him, that type of thing.
Yep.
But
Yep.
your character, it determines like if this turns out good or turns out bad.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so while I'm giving you your flowers, you know, you have been able to take situations and make good things out of bad situations in the midst of uncertainty of where you're going to live, how you're going to live, who you're going to, like, what are my support systems, who's here for me, who's not here for, like, and I want to applaud you for that.
Thank you.
I know I've had a high level of stability in my life. My father worked 40 years on the same job. My mother and my parents have been married for 50 years this year.
Yeah.
Like I've had a very traditional, very stable life, and I'm only where I am, right?
Yeah.
And for you to have this high level of instability and navigate these waters, and yes, make bad choices. I did too.
Yep.
But then make some good ones too,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And then leverage the things that work for you to like become monumental in your life. Like kudos to you for all that you've not just endured, but you've actually conquered. Kudos to you for that.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. And, you know, I think that it goes with the people that have really believed in me and really helped me.
Yeah.
You know, I think that sometimes when there's a lot of misdirection, sometimes you just need somebody to direct you.
Yeah.
And to tell you that it's going to be okay.
Yep.
You know, and so I have had a high level of instability in my life. But one of the things that I've also been really grateful has been that people have seen me.
Yes.
You know, and so I think that when you have people who see you, it's then about, okay, how do you see yourself?
There you go.
You know?
That's it. Yep.
So, yeah, no, I appreciate that.
That's good. That's good. Okay, so 2 more questions and we're done. This next one is around, I ask this to every guest.
Yep. I feel like there's been like so many moments where I've had to hold on to hope. But I would say the most pressing one for me was, you know, losing my little sister to suicide. having your best friend be taken away from you, you know, as you go through the foster care system. I feel like I experienced that loss pretty early. But losing her to death was just even more difficult because it's something that feels so final.
Yeah.
And I felt like my life was at the, you know, the crux of my career. I had just graduated from grad school. And so, you know, you're really excited. You're, you know, flowing. You're ready to conquer the world. And then all of a sudden, boom, you know, something like this happens. And so for me, it was like the first time in my life that I really wasn't sure if I was going to make it. And yeah, so I think holding on to hope actually started with the feelings of experiencing hopelessness and sitting in that. For me, it was me spending long periods of time in the bed and trying to figure out what was I going to do. Lots and lots of therapy. And I remember actually I was slated to speak at a conference, and I had just connected with an organization, and we were working on a series called Courageous Conversations. And I was supposed to fly to Boston to go do that conference, and I just could not do it. My mental health was like not in the space to be able to do it. And so I had to take the risk and say, hey, I really have to take care of myself. So I ended up going into an intensive outpatient treatment program and learning about acceptance commitment therapy. And it was actually in that moment that I realized that I had something to hold on to. And it was really my sister's memory, my sister's legacy. And what I ended up doing was turning and actually writing. You know, that has been my tool of support. And so I wrote a book. And for me, it was, you know, I really want to be able to heal through my story. And by healing through my story, I needed to write about it. Because for a really long time, my story was silenced. I didn't get to talk about it. Nobody really knew. People thought they knew, but they didn't actually know what actually happened. And so in me writing was really my journey towards healing. It was through holding on to other previous memories that I've had. You know, I think that when the important thing for me that I've had is that I've had a lot of really hard stuff happen, but I've also had a lot of good stuff that's happened. And so in the moments where negative things happen, one of the things that I can look back on or fall back on is that I've had experience with positivity. I've had experience with hope. And so my hope is the future. You know, my hope is what's happening, not necessarily presently, but what step can I take to move that momentum forward?
Got it.
And so for me, holding on to hope has been recognizing that life has its moments. And for me, I had to learn that because sometimes, you know, there'd be one day where I feel really, really good. And the next day I don't. And I remember early on in my mental health struggles was like, oh my gosh, like there feels like there's no end in sight. But then the next day I wake up and life feels great or life feels better. And so it's really meeting myself in those moments to know that hope will reappear.
Okay, good. That's good. We're going to do a call to action. And so what's a call to action for our listeners? And you can share with your book that you've written. And right after you came to the program, you made the Amazon's bestsellers list with your book and everything. So we can talk a little bit about that. But go ahead and just give a call to action for our listeners. What's some lasting words you want to leave with them?
I really want people that it's listening to know that healing is a lifelong journey, that some days are going to be really, really tough, but some days are going to be really easy. And then you'll have the in-betweens. But if you recognize and know that healing comes in waves, it comes in times, comes in moments, then you're going to be good. But you really have to meet yourself where you are. You know, and if you meet yourself where you are, you'll be able to really, I feel like if you meet yourself where you are, you'll be able to accept yourself where you are. And that's going to be sort of the foundation for you to move forward.
To where you're going.
And to where you're going.
Yeah, that's good.
You know, I also really want to also say that, you know, you are the prize.
Talk about it.
Yeah, You Are the Prize. My book talks about it. I would really love for people to go out and purchase your copy of You Are the Prize.
Hold up a little bit higher, just a little bit. There you go.
Seeing yourself beyond the imperfections of your trauma. If you're looking for a story of hope, a story of inspiration, a story of, different hardships and challenges and obstacles, a story of wins, this is the book for you.
Okay.
I also am working on building.
Where can I get it?
You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at Fulton Street Books and Coffee. You can get it on Barnes and Nobles. You can also hit me up and get it from me.
Okay.
I'm also working on a platform called Launch Ahead, which we are working on supporting young people that are transitioning out of the foster care system.
Good.
To ensure that no young person has to transition in the way that I have and the way that so many other young people have, to the way to homelessness, but they have a path forward.
Okay.
And so you can
Talk
follow
about
me.
it. What does it actually do?
Yeah, so essentially what Launch Ahead will do is to help young people create personalized roadmaps. So if a young person is interested in culinary school or interested in cooking but doesn't necessarily know how to go about it, in the app, they'll be able to take a personalized assessment, which is going to highlight some underlying insights that they may not be aware of. And really connect them to different resources from A to Z on how to get that done.
Okay.
So it's a step-by-step guide to really help young people uncover just some of their passions and some of the things that they're interested in doing, so that when you leave out of the foster care system, you have an idea of where you're going.
Okay.
You have some sort of agency. You have some choice.
Yeah. And what's it called again? Launch Ahead.
It's called Launch Ahead.
There you go. Love it.
Absolutely.
All right. Anything else you're working on?
I'm working on my audiobook.
Okay.
So that's another thing that I'm working on. I'm working on affirmation flashcards. I'm working on dropping some more merch, some more You Are the Prize merch, and some other things that I'm working on that we are still in progress of kind of doing. So.
Okay. What is the website where they get the merch from? And then how can they reach you on socials or follow you on socials?
Yeah, so merch is still under construction. And my website is actually still under construction. But you can find me on www.AmnoniMotivates.com. If you want to learn more about Launch Ahead, you can go to www.launchahead.co. And you can also follow me on the socials on Instagram, Moni Loren, on Facebook, Amnoni Myers. So yeah, those are some of the places where you can find me.
Wonderful, wonderful. This has been a treat, Amnoni. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Well, I told you guys you were in for a treat. This has been a wonderful experience. And I want you all to continue to tune in, follow us, like, share, and repost of the things that we have going on here. We on LinkedIn, Instagram, and on Facebook, we are New You Unlimited. All right. So look forward to seeing you all soon. Thanks a lot for listening.
Thank you for listening to this episode of New Voices. Visit our website at www.newuunlimited.com. That is NEWU Unlimited.com. Follow us on social media at New You Unlimited on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And a special thank you to our producer, Jesse Ulrich. If you're looking for self-improvement, join our programs for personal and professional development. New You is a way for diverse talent to imagine, discover, and actualize a 2.0 version of yourself. Bring your future into focus.